Each human being comes into the world alone, travels through life as a separate person, and ultimately, dies alone.
Perhaps we know very little about loneliness. A lot of us might even confuse it with solitude. Solitude is simply a state of seclusion or separation. Loneliness might overlap with solitude, but it is something very different. To make things more simple, solitude is a kind of physical isolation, and loneliness is its psychological cousin.
The feeling of loneliness is a complex human emotion that is unique and universal to every human. It is a state of mind that makes a person feel unpleasant emotions toward perceived isolation from the rest of the world.
We all have our optimal thresholds for each kind of our social interactions. We feel lonely when we fail to achieve the level of emotional understanding required to reach the optimal threshold of a particular social interaction, such as a romantic relationship.
Someone lonely out there might have family, friends, and many people around them, but what they don't have is a deep nurtured relationship. Lonely people don't lack contacts. They lack connections and intimacy, due to a sheer inability to make others aware of your pain. Loneliness is a feeling of being cut off from the rest of the universe.
We feel lonely when we are unable to share our emotions with others around us. It could be due to the absence of our close and loved ones, or it could equally be a product of our complex emotions and situations that others around us are unable to appreciate.
Science and research have just begun to unravel the mysteries of this disease. Some recent studies have found that loneliness is associated with low self-esteem and a lack of confidence. Adverse life events, or a sudden change in surroundings, have also been linked to the development of loneliness.
Surveys have shown that this feeling of isolation is more common among immigrants and students who travel abroad, and in regions of active war. Followers of certain cultures that promote collective living tend to be more affected by loneliness. Other studies, however, point towards communities exposed to a stressful environment and certain diseases.
Unfortunately, all these contradictory findings suggest loneliness does not follow any definite pattern, and if there is one, we are very far from apprehending it. It's really difficult to even approximate the amount of pain a lonely person feels, because loneliness is mostly a subjective emotion.
An extrovert might feel lonely in relatively less crowded environments, whereas an introvert might find it perfect in the same surroundings. A person is lonely if he feels and thinks he is. All we've come to know is that loneliness does not care for any caste or creed, gender or race. It can equally strike members of any age from any social setup.
Whatever the cause, loneliness tricks our mind to sense social pain. A critical level of loneliness is necessary for optimal mental health. And feeling lonely sometimes is completely perfect. It triggers us to search for a better partner, job, and education, and motivates us to seek more social connections.
However, feeling isolated for a long period can lead to many adverse outcomes and can be dangerous for your physical and psychological health. Chronic loneliness is associated with a feeling of being empty, rejected, and unwanted. Those who suffer from social disconnections carve for human contact, but their state of mind, situations, or surroundings makes it more difficult for them to form their required social connections. Their failure to do so makes them feel even lonelier and more rejected. This sets in a cycle of events that lead to self-reinforcement of loneliness. That is why some people find loneliness to be dangerously addictive.
Prolonged social disconnection can lead to hypervigilance. That might explain why lonely people are often found to be more paranoid and difficult to approach. We must understand the fact that a person becomes lonely over the course of time and events, which makes him lose his will to live for others, and perhaps even himself.
Isolated people are reported to have inadequate and poor sleep. They also lag in proper self-care, nutrition, and find it difficult to maintain a good quality of life. Such individuals have disrupted metabolism, and most of them show signs of premature aging. Their upset metabolic activities predispose them to various cardiovascular diseases, and strokes. Inadequate social exposure can have a profound impact on the way we perceive and react to events and objects in dimensions of time and space. Isolated individuals have decreased cognition, memory, and learning, and are more likely to make poor decisions. Lonely people think of things in a way unnatural from the mindset of a normal community. Their way of thinking develops around their perceived isolated surroundings, in which they live. They are more prone to be affected by addiction, drug abuse, and other risky and antisocial behaviors. Continued social disconnection can lead to the development of certain risk factors for suicide.
Loneliness and depression are deeply interlinked. A depressed person often feels lonelier and more rejected. And conversely, chronic isolation can also induce depression in an otherwise normal individual.
With a long list of diverse signs and symptoms and no single common cause, loneliness can sometimes be very difficult to observe and treat. Cognitive behavioral therapy is the most preferred approach, but the course and method of treatment vary according to patients.
Lonely individuals must recognize their emptiness as a sign that some change is needed. Either they are in the wrong company or their surroundings might be holding them back. An isolated individual must learn to expect the right amount of social interaction from the right people. Defeating loneliness is all about having a few quality relationships to share your feelings and emotions.
The level of loneliness in any normal individual tends to oscillate according to their expected and achieved social goals. Awareness about loneliness among the public is quite low. Making others aware of this potentially devastating state of mind can help them in their fight.